Okay, are we content with this arrangement?
I think it's possibly about as good as it's going to get.
Can we maybe arrange our mugs out of the way and stuff?
No, the mugs are the best part.
The mugs are the part that makes it real.
Yeah.
Oh my god, and your credit card bill that you're leaving there?
What? It doesn't have any information on it. Important information,
Nothing
at least.
important.
All right, I'd like to point out that Juniper has
Put this right
nothing to
over
say on
Juniper's
this
face.
Oh,
subject. It's a blocker.
we're trying to censor the baby.
Okay, we're gonna put that
We
just
don't
sort of
hear
right
from you.
about here.
That looks good.
Huh, baby.
And then hopefully it doesn't pick up too
So
much
everyone
of...
project,
Huh, baby.
except for you.
Ready, everybody?
All right, what
Okay,
are we...
so we're going to be watching... The Fine Bros did a video, because they've never done anything controversial before. They've done a video about Seinfeld. So I have person who likes Seinfeld, person who likes Seinfeld, Seinfeld information buff. She's the resident, knows everything about Seinfeld.
Her entire life is
Her entire
actually
life.
reciting
Seinfeld
scenes from
Yes,
Seinfeld.
all our knowledge of high culture comes from Seinfeld, which is a Seinfeld reference.
The baby is very interested in talking
Oh, baby!
I like
Do you want to grab
Seinfeld.
my face?
to you. Yeah.
I like Seinfeld.
Yeah, I do. Do you want to
You
go?
do
face
want to grab my
has been-
face.
Okay, tiny pants, come here. It's time for you to take a nap, so we're going to cuddle up. I don't think
Ready
you're
to
gonna
watch?
be able to do that, but
Ready to watch some Seinfeld?
Okay,
All right.
ready.
Welcome to Does It Hold Up? The new show where we take a look back at
Already
content
just
from the
the name
past.
of it.
We brought in some young
Yeah.
people who fit the original 18 to 29-year-old demographic for Seinfeld.
Oh, yeah.
who
Oh,
hadn't
yeah.
seen the
You
show.
two are in that demographic. Yeah, Juniper out.
And it was never on Netflix?
We had them watch a handful of full episodes before coming in to shoot.
Watching Seinfeld on my own for this episode, I was a bit confused.
We'll be showing them some highlights to find out the
what?
answer to
Because
the
you realize
question,
that this show's about
Does
nothing?
it hold up?
How could you not have seen it?
Where did you get all these?
My dad was a collector. I inherited them after he died from a long, painful bout with...
Super Bowl!
Just interrupts her.
Tempted. It's very tempting to play all those toys.
Bullfrog.
That's the point.
Adults act like this over toys.
Jerry, what are you doing?
I'm putting this on him and we're going to the sink.
You're priceless.
Dude, I'd be offended
been
too.
played with.
That's my dead dad's stuff.
I said no.
No means no.
Already foreshadowing.
Wants to play with her toys.
Every man wants to play with a woman's toys.
Right?
He's like, I can't even
With like the premise.
watch this show.
Hey, can you just get me an aspirin?
Oh, I remember this part.
Eat.
The beginning of the end.
That caused drowsiness.
Deceitful little Jerry here, man.
Cause.
May cause drowsiness.
This is so f***ed up.
This would totally be controversial in a day like today.
That's legit not funny. I understand it.
It is
The
funny.
show came out in like the 70s or 80s.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, honey.
90s?
You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
That cannot have been
Pause.
in the 90s.
Dude, the premise was that it was rude.
Yeah.
The premise was that
They're
he
like,
was wrong.
this couldn't have been good in the 90s. And it's
Dude.
like, no, it's not okay in the 90s.
It was
That's
outrageous
the
in
point.
90s.
Well,
It was outrageous today.
And like,
Yeah.
it's like they have no reference for what else was going on in the 90s, because this was also during the same era that Roseanne was having, premarital sex among her kids and like other things that, like, they were dealing with social issues in the 90s, and they were doing it in a way that was funny so that people would watch it, but also offensive so that we would realize that there are social issues we need to be addressing.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
what,
they're missing the whole premise is
Yeah.
that it's wrong.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be
That's the
accepting
point.
what they're doing.
That's what makes it funny.
this
Dead baby jokes aren't
exactly.
funny because they're
because that's what
socially
we want to
accepted.
do.
Right, Juniper?
Yeah, Juniper.
Yeah,
do
Juniper.
you want to have some dead baby
She has
jokes?
some things. She's going to come back and say that this whole thing made her uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh.
If I hear one more,
Is it okay to slap
this
a baby
makes me
if she does?
uncomfortable. It's supposed to make you
That's
uncomfortable.
why we're laughing out of the reflex that causes us to laugh because we're uncomfortable, not because we think that this is okay, because we're all sitting here tacitly agreeing
Well,
with it.
Yeah,
I would
or like
totally
mommy
do
mommy
that.
jokes.
Yeah, we're like, how she was trying to tell you about how her dad died.
And you're
And all
like,
you do is say,
simple.
Oh, look at that.
wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
She's like starts the sob story, and then he's like, "Oh, look at this thing!
I'm gonna go put this in the sink.
I'm gonna take this over to the sink."
Well, and it's like it's comparable to like the other thing that we do with women or whatever, right? Where I'm not, you're talking and I'm looking at your boobs, right? It's that, but with your dead dad and your toys.
Please tell me they did that episode, looking into the cleavage.
I don't think
Cleavage.
so.
You're supposed to
into it.
just take a peek, not. If they didn't put that one in there, then
Then they don't even know what
they didn't do
offensive is.
their diligence if that is not in their series.
They might have cut it, but I don't remember seeing that
All
one.
right, well,
All
let's
right,
see
well,
where this
continue.
goes.
Couple episodes earlier. So if this episode that first aired in 1997 aired today in 2018, does it hold up?
No. It's hilarious that people thought this was okay.
Twitter would explode. Seinfeld would get
See,
back.
we don't think it's okay.
Yeah.
We didn't
The
think it
point
was
was
okay.
And the
it
other
wasn't
characters
okay.
in the
Everybody lose
episode.
their sense of humor.
I don't know.
I mean, we
Well-
didn't think it was okay. We thought it was funny that there would be such an idiot in the world who would act
Do
like
this
this.
stuff.
And by the way, it looks like they're done evaluating this episode, and you'll notice they deliberately left out the part where they went to Kramer's apartment, who is set up like he thinks he's Merv Griffin, and he's interviewing people. So Jerry comes over all happy because he had gotten to play with his mate's toys because he doped her up on wine and turkey, and he's going to
drowsy
brag
aspirin.
about it. And Kramer and Newman were like, "What
the heck?
How could you do this? Oh, I feel uncomfortable with this. We're going to move you down the couch because it's inappropriate that you're talking about this." So nobody
Even
Within
in
the
the
world.
when
episode.
Elaine found out, she flipped out.
Yeah.
So to
Everybody.
act like anybody at the time thought it was okay, the only people who thought it was okay were Jerry and George because they were getting to play with the toys.
who were demonstrated to be
And,
wrong
by
within
the
their
way,
own world.
This whole thing was a euphemism for date rape. They
Yeah.
did that on purpose. They were
'Cause we
on
couldn't-
purpose doing it, and you were supposed to be uncomfortable.
Well, and that's another
the
thing
fact
that's
that
an
they were doing
interesting point about the difference between now and then is that then we had to use euphemisms because we couldn't have a date rape plot. So you
Yeah.
had to use a euphemism like "I want to get to play with your dead dad's toys,"
Correct.
which is an awful lot like
I wanna
all
get
the
to play
other
with your
toys
toys.
women have,
Playing
right?
in a different way.
Whereas
Yeah.
now we have because everything can't be euphemistic, it has to be straight up.
It has
You
to be
have to
literal.
have a date rape scene, and then you have to.
And then we're all traumatized by having to see the date rape scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we have to have trigger warnings. Whereas here, you could, in a fantasy world, play out the same premise, recognize that it's not okay, without having to watch people get date
Well,
raped.
and you gotta remember what the censors were like back in the 90s because you couldn't have something that dramatic on a half-hour sitcom that aired at 9 o'clock at night because kids could see it. And back in those days, kids weren't allowed to see stuff like that. And so this was couched in a way that if kids watched it, they wouldn't necessarily get what the larger message was.
But the adults all
But the
did.
adults did. And so it was reasonably
That's a good
considered
point.
safe to show at 9 o'clock. Parents weren't now left explaining what it means to have, a date rape. They instead were allowed to talk
Yeah.
about why you don't try and trick people into playing with your toys. Right? Which is, so now on the
Which
surface
is
we're talking
in-
about something safer.
Yeah.
Well, and it would be kid appropriate too, because you're really not supposed to go over to your friend's house and then play with their toys while they sleep.
Yeah, if they tell you this is
That's
my
bad
collectible,
sleep.
you don't play with it.
Yeah.
That is bad sleepover etiquette.
Correct.
Bad
So, I mean,
sleepover etiquette.
Yeah, no, we
every
were not all
level.
tolerant of the
No.
subtle message of date rape. We were all completely aware of what it was if we were adults.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, move on.
Okay, continuing.
Moving on.
Okay, please tell me that
On
they.
TV today, people would be like, you better believe that every single person who worked on the show would probably be fired. No! It could be a lot worse,
Seriously.
but he's still, putting a woman to sleep so that he could play with her belongings.
You probably could, because the things on TV right now are a lot edgier than this.
Yup.
In terms of how entertaining it was, for me, it does really hold up. I don't think this would fly at all.
No, this would not be okay. Ever since the Me Too movement and stuff has arisen, stuff like this would be way too sensitive.
Wait a second. What also was going on in the 90s that
Yeah.
also had a lot of parents having to explain, I don't know, oral sex to their children that was on the news because it was happening
fair.
and the Me Too movement? What the
Yeah.
heck?
To be fair, the Clinton oral sex issue came up a year later. We didn't know that was
90.
going on until 98. So to be
Okay.
fair, the parents
Okay.
had not had to have the oral sex
they
is
would
when you
very
talk about
soon.
sex.
They very soon are
conversation.
about to have a
That's what
conversation.
you talk about. Yes, that's what it is.
Okay, 1992.
Okay,
the
and,
contest.
good. I was wondering if they're going to do the contest. Okay.
It's a good one.
What's the matter?
Oh, this pissed me off.
Well, already
This
off to a good
pissed
start.
me off.
I remember this. Oh my god, this is so funny.
Yeah, that's my man.
I also like how during this conversation they never say masturbate.
Yes, because they can.
I stopped by the house to drop the car off, and
I'm surprised he's so open about this whole interaction.
I am never doing that again.
Oh, give me a break.
Right.
You don't think I can?
No chance.
You think you could?
Well, I know I could hold out longer than you.
Then they make it a
Make it
contest.
interesting.
Shouldn't we all be into like self-love and stuff? I thought we were all supposed to like all sexual expression is equal.
Wait a second. Count me in on this.
Okay, can you pause it for a second?
Yeah.
As the old person in the room, I'll give you guys some cultural context again because this one aired in 1992. I think it said right. Yeah. Just a year before. No, just earlier that year, Bill Clinton had fired the Surgeon General for talking about masturbation, and this was at the height of HIV infection. They had just figured out that AIDS was caused by HIV, but beyond that, they couldn't figure out how to prevent transmission and other kinds of things. And so the Surgeon General had been saying, maybe we need to teach children in school about masturbation so that they'll have, maybe more years where they won't
don't
be
have to be trying to have sex.
Yeah, to have actual contact. And so she got fired because people went all up in arms because she actually used the word masturbation. And they talked about it. People who were criticizing her were talking about it like she was advocating for like classes in how to do masturbation.
Let's all have a circle jerk.
And she
Which
was
is
not.
hilarious given the things that we're currently talking about
right.
doing in 5th grade
Right,
and
and
younger.
she was not talking about that, but she had just gotten fired. And so one of the things that these guys thought that they would be really fun is to see how they could have an entire plot surrounding the topic without ever saying the word because they would have been censored. They wouldn't have been allowed to put it on the air. So they
have to be euphemistic.
Right, again with my argument that they put it on at a time of night where possibly kids would be watching it. And so if a kid was watching this, they wouldn't necessarily know what the person had done. They did something. And now they're all going to not do that thing. But a parent could talk about it and not necessarily have to talk about masturbation.
Yeah.
So the whole point of this episode was to try and get the topic of masturbation on the air without getting censored.
Yep.
That's the whole reason why they did it.
I like Kramer. That's like the one thing I got out of it. Kramer is kind of funny.
Kramer is
Yeah. Kind of.
It's a different thing because you're a woman.
So what?
It's easier. It's easier for a woman.
What are you
not to
groaning
do it
about?
than a man. We have to do it. It's part.
That joke still holds up.
That is true. It's true. It's
I'll put up 150.
And she has to put in more money? Not fair.
In this case,
Why? Why is it not fair?
Seems like a regular episode to me.
I feel like people would watch this right now.
No. I don't really relate to the humor.
No.
The contest definitely,
Yeah.
in my eyes, it really does just
okay,
hilarious.
so again,
one
all the
definitely
dudes
holds
get it
up,
because they
even
completely
though,
get
like,
it, and
yes,
Elaine has to
obviously,
put in
we know
extra
that
money for
men
the same
would
reason that these
masturbate,
girls
but
don't
there's
get
still
it.
that
Tori gets
conversation,
it.
Tori
Women
gets
don't
it.
really do that though. No, definitely not. This is probably the
You're-
worst one.
You're just offended because
I don't
it's
like
your
Morgan.
Morgan is no good.
Morgan, no good.
She's well, because she's too busy thinking about like how
How
it
can I be
pertains to
offended
her.
by
Yeah,
it?
how does it pertain to her? And it has nothing to do
Now we
with
gotta go to
her.
the soup place.
What soup?
the soup Nazi.
Soup stand.
Classic.
Craig's been going there.
He's always raving. I finally got a
You
chance
guys
to
chose
go
some
there the
good
other day,
ones.
And I tell you that
I've never watched Seinfeld.
We still have references to this all the time in our house.
Oh, yeah. It's a cultural
A
icon.
little temperamental, especially about the ordering procedure. He's secretly referred to as the soup Nazi.
You can't be throwing that word around nowadays.
I thought
Why
this
not?
was insane.
Why?
How many times
The media throws that word around at
Who gets to
everyone.
throw the word around?
Everyone's a Nazi when it comes to the media. Like, look at.
How come we can't throw around grammar Nazi, which is still funny, and that's always funny.
Well, and he's being completely autocratic about how you can order his soup or you don't deserve to have his soup. Isn't that like the premise of anyway?
Well, and he even in the words of introducing it is tempering it and saying that some people, not me specifically, refer to him as the soup Nazi.
Yeah.
And then of course we all start doing it because we meet him and we go, the
Yes.
dude is a bit of a soup Nazi.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, the entire reason we know so much about the Holocaust is because the Germans were keeping such accurate records throughout the entire process. I'm sorry. Little rigid. Anyway. Bless you.
He
Said the
yells
word
and you don't get your
Nazi.
soup. He yells and you don't get your soup.
So he's a Nazi just because he yells?
Have you met the soup Nazi?
Okay, see, I think this is the only part of like Seinfeld that I thought was kind of funny, which is this whole ordering thing.
Excuse me, I think you forgot my bread.
Bread, $2 extra.
$2, but
His voice is so soothing.
everyone in front of me got free bread.
No soup for you.
Yikes.
He takes the money, he gives the money back.
Yeah.
Get out, you're gonna ruin it for the rest of us.
Quiet.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was probably one of the best episodes. It was really hilarious. No soup for you. Like, that's just so iconic already. It's just been stuck in my head ever since I watched it.
Right?
Out of me was just a light exhale. The show is just not that funny to me in terms of comedy. No, not really.
No.
Yeah, it holds up.
What Seinfeld does really
See,
great
Brandon, I feel like has a reasonable
quick
threshold
bits,
for like
really
what's
quick,
funny or not.
scenes, and it cuts right away.
I just don't think the format of Seinfeld and the Soup Nazi just doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah, I think this could be okay.
Oh, yes, definitely really does.
I don't think if that came out today it would hold up.
Yeah,
Why?
I mean, I was laughing
Why?
really hard during this episode. So I
Just
can
because they say
definitely see
Nazi?
it holding to this day.
Jerry!
Oh gosh.
What is this?
Didn't Dad recently see one of these at a store and it was for like $12,000 and he's like, holy crap.
Like this episode the best out of all the ones you showed me.
Yeah, look at all the diversity on that screen that they didn't have in the 90s because they were actually racist in the 90s. Wait, what?
Wait a second.
You know, it's late. I really should go.
See, she's uncomfortable, so she leaves.
Winona,
Oh my god, everyone's like, what's
They're
wrong
making
with
it
you?
worse.
Oh my god.
That's what the girls are doing.
Laugh track is so odd too because I'm cringing rather than laughing.
That's the funny
That's
part.
funny. It's because they have to.
She is?
it's just that it's a very sensitive issue for me.
And well, it should.
And they always set the girls up to look like the bitch too.
You see, I'm very sensitive.
Why does she look like the bitch?
She looks,
doesn't.
she looks reasonable and he looks like an a-hole.
Yeah.
Jerry looks like a dick.
He
Yeah.
looks like an a-hole,
They
an
said
insensitive
Jerry.
jerk off.
Who thinks the girl looks like a bitch? Nobody in this room.
Apparently she does.
Well,
Okay, moving on.
Because only women call other women bitches. Men
Yes.
never do.
Yeah.
I don't think she looks like
She
a bitch.
does
No, she looks, like, a reasonable person,
Yeah.
which is the point of the show. They aren't
Yes.
supposed to be good people.
Jerry
They're
is
supposed
the
to-
jerk off.
Yeah.
Because I once went to a great Szechuan restaurant in this neighborhood. I don't remember.
Okay,
the
this
exact
part was
address.
pretty good.
Excuse
Oh,
me.
no.
You must know where the Chinese restaurant is around here. Why must I
You must know. Oh no.
That's not his
No, because you're the post office man. Because you might have multiple identities that would impact your ability to know something. And that's why I'm asking you, guy who I saw the back of the head of.
And that's what Jerry says to him. They cut it off, but he said, no, because you're the mailman.
you're
I
the
thought
mail-
you'd know the address
I think
around here.
you're like a cop. You run the beat, man. You know the
Driving around a
neighborhood.
lot.
You
Just so happens to be Asian, so it fulfills.
But of course, now that he was doing all those stupid things with the cigar store Indian, everything
Everything
from
else
her
is
perspective,
racist-y.
it does look now. I mean, why the mailman would react that negatively, but from her perspective, it probably does look like, oh, you went and asked the Chinese mailman. Why would you assume he knows, right?
Yeah.
because he was standing there and he's a mailman.
I mean, that's the point, is that to make him
Yeah.
look even worse,
Yeah.
right?
Because he's just that tone deaf.
Which is funny.
That's the joke.
Right.
Because the rest of us know it's not okay.
Different girlfriend.
Ooh, I love that place, but it's usually so crowded. Can we get a table?
Oh, don't worry. I made
I feel like he was thinking a little bit too much about that one.
Really?
Yeah.
I arranged for the.
See, he's trying not to be a dick, which is hard for him.
Good save.
He's trying to be a little bit too much PC to make up for his joke.
Yep. Because we did that in the 90s.
Overcompensation.
guide. Could I have this?
Sure, take it.
Thanks.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh, no, I
Now she's
remember
gonna
this.
take it
Oh, by
back.
the way, that TV guide I gave you, I need it back.
Why?
Well, I'm doing a
See, this whole interaction with TV Guide, a lot of people would feel a big disconnect with. Like, people are like, what the heck is a TV
Yeah.
Guide?
Yeah, that's
really
true.
need it back.
That's
I feel like
It is mine.
Oh, but you can't give something and then take it back. I mean, what do you?
See, and this also requires that you know what that phrase is.
Well,
Like, nobody
yeah.
uses that anymore, so you might not know it because
Yeah.
of that.
What?
Well, a person that gives something and then they're dissatisfied and they wish they had never
And-
given it to the person that they originally gave it to.
You mean like an Indian giver?
Yeah, I had no idea what that meant.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
Neither is our reviewer.
Depends how like triggered people can get over this kind of stuff. People try too hard sometimes to like not be racially insensitive.
Yeah.
But then they just end up looking dumb.
I think this episode holds
So
up.
maybe
As
if they
the audience
didn't try
member,
quite
we
so
can
hard
see
and
that
we all
they're
just
all
forgave
seeing
them
the
because we're
wrong
trying to be good people, except for
through
Jerry, who is
other
trying to be a
characters
jerk.
that are calling them out.
That's not gonna happen in today's standards.
I could still see it as an episode today.
Definitely, that one was hilarious.
If you're being a racist and people point it out to you, like, doesn't exactly erase the incident that just happened. I think this still holds up.
I think it's interesting though,
feel like she's getting made
like
fun of for anything. It's
the
Jerry
white
being
woman
the
who
fool
is the
here.
most triggered about it, given that the
Yeah.
like
This would
looks like we got a
cause
Hispanic
the
and
biggest
Asian
rush.
and someone
It holds up. It
of
makes the
Arab
characters
descent,
aware of
and
what
those
they're
girls
saying.
can flip
All
liked
sometimes.
it.
I thought it was funny.
Racist just to say racist shit and be funny. It's kind of like the characters are aware of what they're saying and they're
Yes,
off.
almost like on every episode.
Ahead of time, we have a couple more clips from episodes you haven't already watched.
Okay, I'm interested.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
The baby's room. I'm really sorry.
I guess it was the baby's room.
Credits roll.
I was in the pool!
Oh, poor George.
Well, I just got back from swimming in the pool, and the water was cold.
Shrinkage.
You mean shrinkage?
Yes!
Again, trying to talk about things you can't talk about
Shrinkage.
Yes!
without referring to.
Is there the shrinkage thing comes from?
Do women know about shrinkage?
Oh my god.
Laundry?
Damn, ladies, shrinkage is a thing!
This is
See?
such a...
Yeah, and then 90s told him about it. What do you want?
It shrinks?
These are the issues we need on television.
I don't know how you guys walk around with those things.
Honestly, I've thought about that. Penises are real bizarre to me.
I think this is very like controversial.
They are pretty weird.
I can definitely see this in like an episode today.
Back in here, people would be like, yeah, that's funny.
The other
I didn't,
thing is,
like,
I don't think
really
people realize that
find
this
it
show was like
entertaining.
the How I Met Your Mother of the 90s. And so, like, How I Met Your Mother had all those phrases like, you know, a lemon and
Wait for
the
it.
woo girl and wait for it. And these things that became cultural icons that are in part because they were extremely relatable. So having a friend who's a jerk off who says, you know, slightly racist-y things by accident, or maybe on purpose because he's literally that insensitive, that's something that you could relate to and realize that that person's wrong in that moment, in the same way that we recognize that, you know, Barney is wrong for being such a, you know,
Lech.
playboy. But the phrases and things that come out of that are still culturally relevant because they reference something that we all are aware of. And so
Well, and one of these young people said, is that where the term shrinkage
comes from. Because
Like,
you
they
needed
knew
a word for it, right? You needed a word for this. And again, things that when you have to use it euphemistically, it becomes something that all of us can say and all of us can become aware of without having to expressly talk about, you know, small penises that got cold and shrunk in.
Exactly. We don't have
Because
to
it's
be
called
vivid.
shrinkage. You don't have to be vivid.
Yeah.
On tiny pants.
Tiny baby.
Tiny. It is the baby's room.
Yeah.
Today.
Right now it's the
Right
baby's
now
room.
it's the baby's room.
See, we can do this in front of Juniper because she doesn't understand.
She doesn't understand.
Yeah.
This one probably would be the only one I've seen so far where I feel like it has the best chance of like,
Yes, because
standing
it's
up to
at
time.
the expense of men and making them look stupid. And you're okay with that.
It's such a simple plot line too. Like we definitely still like a lot of humor.
That one holds up. I don't know where
Why'd they censor dick, but not penis?
Because I think dick, I guess, is an insult or a first name. You
Or
know?
first
Could
name.
go either way.
You know, if you say it as a name, it's perfectly fine, but as a body part, it's not. But penis is okay.
But penis is okay.
Well, that's science.
Yeah. Because we believe in science.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who thought Scientology was the belief in science.
An episode on the topic of men shrinkage.
Those two girls behind you, they're eavesdropping.
Really?
You know, just because you two are homosexual, so what? You should just come out of the closet and be openly gay already.
That was definitely a staple of the 90s, I feel like gay humor.
So what do you say?
Yes, because we didn't have transgenders in the 90s. We had a few people who changed gender, but it was definitely not the, like, pervasive cultural icon of gender bending in the 90s the way that it is now. You had some people who were edgy, and there are definitely, like, old stories of people who would transition or whatever, but they were such an exception that the only sexual minority group that anyone was really aware of was gays.
Just like, let's do it.
I'm not going along.
We still see this on TV. This isn't all that out there.
And do your parents know?
No, what?
My parents? They don't know what's going on.
True.
Oh, God, you're that girl in the coffee shop that was eavesdropping on us. I knew you looked familiar.
Oh, no!
Get going.
There's been a big misunderstanding here.
Yeah.
We did that
Their immediate reaction is to be so. Oh, this is like.
Yes, because they're not, and they're horn dogs, and they want to be able to date all the people, and so they don't want someone to be eliminated.
Well, I mean, the thing that they keep saying the catchphrase from this episode was not that there's anything wrong with that.
There's anything wrong with that.
So they're not reacting to that because there's something wrong with being gay.
Yeah.
They're reacting like that because they're not gay.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's people don't want to be associated with something that they aren't.
Well, especially if it does come with like expectations on everybody else's part, that they're like, and I feel like they definitely are guys that date a lot, and so they definitely don't want to be eliminating 2 more women out of the city of New York to date because they're
like Barney Stinson.
So they don't really want to be accused of being gay because they're like, they want to keep their options open.
It's kind of interesting that part's not coming up in this evaluation of Seinfeld. You know, he had a different girlfriend every single episode,
all the time.
Like,
and then he would do the really like stupid and catty stuff where he called her a two-faced because she was, you know, if she had bad lighting, he thought she was ugly and he didn't want to date her.
I don't
That's
know if I
in
didn't
this
see that.
part of the building.
Or that time he tried to have sex with a virgin. Like, I mean, there are a lot of things where he gets to have sex with everybody. And Elaine does too, to a certain degree, but she definitely has fewer boyfriends. It's less of a plot point, I feel like, than Jerry.
She has a lot of boyfriends, but not. Jerry has a different girlfriend every single
episode.
I mean, I don't know
always
if he
dating
ever had a
somebody else.
girlfriend that carried over 2 episodes.
I think there was that brief time that he was dating the girl who was just like him.
Yeah, that was the finale, and then they were still together come the
beginning of the next season.
Yeah, the first episode of the new season, but then they broke up. So apparently they dated for the summer.
This episode also won a GLAAD award, which is a gay and lesbian.
Anti-defamation.
Yeah, there you go.
Interesting how normalizing it through humor allows things. It can actually be like beneficial and advancing of that culture.
And she's like, I hate this episode because they're talking about stuff that should be talked about.
I think where we go wrong is when we hear what is the beginning of a premise. And then we turn it off because we say, I don't like what they're saying, and we don't realize how they might be wrapping it up.
Well, not to bring this back to a story about myself, but remember that time I was little and I watched that episode of Arthur? You remember that awesome show with the aardvark? Arthur...
I know the story.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Her name was like Molly Muffin or something like that. And she was making fun of another kid for having glasses and calling her Four Eyes. And if you're a good person who actually watches the show, you realize that at the end, you know, that's not good to call people Four Eyes. Lo and behold, 20 years after the story, you might have glasses and be the Four Eyes. But all I got out of it, being the 5-year-old that I was Four Eyes is a good nickname for kids with glasses.
You should call people with glasses Four Eyes.
And that's what happens if you lose attention in the middle of the premise. So you can't turn it off just because it says something that right now sounds wrong. Let it pan out because first off, they're going to say,
she's being the 5-year-old in that story.
A little bit, because you can't just shut down and not listen to what because this is a TV show, so clearly it's scripted and they're going to unfold the story at the rate that they want to. But in real life, when we're talking, sometimes our first effort to express our feelings
doesn't come out great.
Isn't perfect. And if a person shuts you down and decides you're not worth hearing the rest of anything else you might say because your first attempt to express your thoughts is cumbersome, then you end up dismissing people and demonizing people who maybe you agree with in the long run. Yeah. They had just said it wrong in the first place, or their first reaction was not ideal.
And like having a genuine interaction with somebody starts with seeking to understand. And the reason we have shows like this is so that we can begin to seek to understand. Like television is a really good reflection of not just the culture as it is, but also the like sort of that pacing and leading where they also kind of jump ahead of the culture and then help to guide it. But it also has to come from a frame that currently exists within the culture. And so it's like television is a really powerful way to start that conversation and move it forward while also referencing how things currently are. And so for you to come back 20 years later, having not lived through these moments, having not having the cultural context of being an adult in the 90s.
Or having even seen the rest of the episode.
Or even having seen the rest of the episode. And then you end up being a bit of a, coming off a little narrow-minded and unempathetic. And it's like, you can't watch, even a TV show, you have to seek to understand what is the context and frame for where this world exists and what am I supposed to be getting out of it. And that involves watching the entire, I'm guarantee it's 22 minutes once you cut out all the commercials.
Yeah.
Like seriously, invest 22 minutes and watch the dang show.
It's like the hero's journey. You don't start with the hero already knowing the end of the story.
Knowing the answer and
you go
saving
through
the
a
village.
progression of like learning what you need to know.
And failing and having to, and all that
having
other stuff.
setbacks and everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so let's see if she gives him any more chance and finds out that they say there's nothing wrong with it.
Isn't it cultural appropriation that she's wearing a voodoo t-shirt?
I think so.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Pissed.
We knew you were eavesdropping. That's why my friend said all that. It was on purpose.
Why is this the worst thing in the world to be
It's
like?
not the worst thing in the
gay?
We're not gay.
Well, but she's trying to do a profile on them based on stuff she overheard, which is also a social faux pas of its own. It's not that I'm gay; it's that you're a person eavesdropping on me, and now you want to come do. You only wanted to meet me and do a profile on me because you thought I was gay. So why is it okay?
She was there to have a meeting with him, but they didn't know what each other looked like, and so they were sitting in the coffee
In the
shop
booths next to
waiting
each other.
for each other, and she didn't realize that was her interviewee. So then when she came to his apartment, they finally made contact by phone because, of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. So they finally made contact, and they made an arrangement just to meet in his apartment. And so she shows up. She sees the two guys that she had heard talking, and then they are acting like, an old married couple when she arrives. And so
Because they're
she's
good
like,
friends.
she thinks, oh, right on. So they're gay, and he's obviously not out.
Yeah.
And so because she knows who he is, because he's Jerry Seinfeld, and he's he's comedy tour on college campuses.
How come she gets off the hook when she's over here using a bunch of circumstantial evidence that she doesn't actually know, but that she overheard and had no right to hear?
Well, now it just sounds like they're protesting too much, and so it's just suiting her narrative because she heard it. And why would you have been lying when you didn't know anybody was listening? And now that I'm here, you're telling the truth. So she's coming to the conclusion that they were being honest when they didn't know they were being overheard.
So now she thinks even more that they're gay.
Yeah.
And that's all right.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Is this where it came from? Oh my god.
Even if I wasn't gay, like even if that didn't directly apply to me, like I actually do have gay friends, and like I would be upset for them.
I think it could
You'd be offended. You'd be offended on their behalf instead of having somebody who is offended by it say something. You would
For
just say
themselves.
something
You're
for them.
No, she's the interviewer who overheard something and then is using that as her little back
she said
knowledge
she's
and then
gay,
has
so
a
she's
schema.
offended for herself.
Okay.
She said even if she wasn't, then she'd be offended for her friends who are gay.
Okay.
I think that's what she said. I don't know. You guys were talking.
I don't know. I thought you
We
said.
don't care for Morgan anyway.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway.
They were trying to be like, it's okay if you're gay. That whole view, I think, was appropriate.
No, it's definitely different because this was released back when homosexuality wasn't as prevalent. It wasn't as talked about. Like
And they
now,
talked about it.
It's very
It
prevalent.
wasn't as talked
today,
about?
so I feel
Really?
like-
I lived through it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was. Having young people who don't know what it was like telling us what that culture used to be like, it's a little
It's a little
offensive.
rich.
Because I was there. I was teaching human sexuality as far back as 1992. I don't remember what year this episode aired, but
sometime in that window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometime around then.
I'm sorry. They're wrong.
People were definitely talking about being
it wasn't
gay.
that common. I don't know if she just means that commonly known to the average person, or if she meant it wasn't as common as a sexual orientation, because it's the same amount of common as it ever was, because it's always the same amount, because it is what it is.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with anything else.
More
but
culturally
what
talked
she
about, I guess.
might have meant is people didn't talk about it as much, but
yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did. And there were gay characters in shows. Unfortunately, a lot of times they were comedies.
But that's how every culture breaks into the main culture, is through is it
through
racist?
humor.
Is it racist or sexist that in the old days comic books used to have token black characters and female characters? Well, maybe a little bit, but it also broke them into being main characters now. So comedy is one of the best ways to assimilate
always a
into the culture.
progression.
Yeah, it's a step.
It's seriously offensive to hear people characterizing the period of time when I was coming of age as
so
it
backwards.
was so backwards back then.
Everyone was so
And
ignorant.
People weren't ignorant. So
in fact, I'd say they were slightly more nuanced, because they had to work around censors to be able to talk about these things, right? They actually had to
there
work
was
harder.
more censorship back then.
They had to talk. They had to be smarter about how they talk about it in order to bring up an issue that's important without.
I'm stammering over this because I'm like, I have this viewpoint about, the 50s and 60s being more closeted in things than my youth, because of course I came of age in the 90s. So it makes me think maybe they weren't as closeted in the 50s and 60s as I always thought.
Not everything was Leave It to Beaver.
No, it wasn't. And if all you have is media to consume, you would think that we weren't talking about stuff.
Yeah.
It's good for younger people to see some of these shows that show that we were talking about these things.
I think it was in the 70s that they reclassified things that were like literature and books and like whatever medical things within the Library of Congress as being things related to homosexuality as being not a disorder, but like something under sort of just sexual health. And that was like the beginning of all of this stuff becoming really mainstream.
It was when the APA took it out of the DSM.
So that was like in the 70s, right?
It was 1972.
Yeah, so we got 20 years worth of no longer calling homosexuality a disorder before this episode aired, and yet apparently being gay was not prevalent.
Not to keep bringing it always back to HIV and AIDS, but it was a big thing at the time, and there was a
they do an AIDS walk on
they do an AIDS walk on Seinfeld. Of course, they do the AIDS walk, and he doesn't wear his ribbon, so it all becomes about virtue signaling.
Yeah,
I mean, back how long ago, and they were talking about virtue signaling.
So like,
how are they going on the walk, but you're not wearing your ribbon? Don't you support? Well, don't you support the cause? And it's like, well, I'm here walking. And they actually beat him up because he didn't signal. He didn't wear his ribbon while he went on the walk. But that wasn't what I was going to mention. I was going to mention that because HIV and AIDS had first entered the U.S. through, the gay population in San Francisco, it got tied to that population. And so
that was a big stigma breaking.
Right. And so talking about it here is like sort of helping to normalize. You know what I mean? Like them to have people who are on the #1 sitcom say, not that there's anything wrong with it, actually is helpful in the long run. You know what I mean?
It starts the conversation.
But people forget that there were these things that were going on that might have been why they were reacting and writing the scripts that they were writing. So the question is, does it hold up? Well, maybe not, because those aren't necessarily the issues right now. But the virtue signaling is still an issue, isn't it? She sneezed her binky out. But the virtue signaling is still an issue.
Yeah,
right. And I noticed so far we haven't evaluated that episode. There's a pair of gay people in another episode who come and steal the armoire that Elaine had gotten for free and that Kramer was supposed to be guarding, but he was scared of them because they acted so street tough, and so it was like a really good counter to how oftentimes gay people were projected. They were always projected as flamboyant and sissies and stuff like that. And here come these two gay men who like the armoire and are going to beat up Kramer to take it, right? So to pick and choose, anything can look bad.
Yeah.
Well, and they did that ableist episode about the guy in the wheelchair too, which was, it became a thing about like, it's just common courtesy to wipe your wheels. But like,
that's such a good,
right?
Such a good line.
We have lots of almost all of these characters are Jewish.
They're not. Just Jerry.
Just Jerry? But so Jerry's Jewish, and there's like plots about like a bris and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like they go to a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah at some point.
Elaine does, and the kid tries to kiss her. So she goes to talk to his dad, and then he tries to kiss her. Then she goes and talks to the rabbi, and he invites her to Florida.
Well, and then there holidays. And then there's been a number of episodes of like interracial relationships. Like Elaine dated that guy of ambiguous ethnicity, and it became.
And he thought she was Spanish, and she thought he was black.
Right, and they both determined that they were just white, and they're like,
let's go shopping at the Gap.
Right, and look at, we were able to make. Not only were we able to like. The only reason they wanted to know was just because they again with virtue signaling, they both wanted to be dating somebody of color, and they found out they weren't.
Cool.
They both thought it would be cool, and they were interested in each other, and then to find out that they weren't, they're like, well, let's go do generic white activity number 2, because that was also funny at the same. Yeah, right. Today it would be let's wear our Ugg boots and get Starbucks.
Yeah.
But like they were aware of the fact that that white people were the majority culture, and they brought in other cultural elements along the way. So
And
Seinfeld is a very rich and diverse internal world.
And it's always
people.
about them struggling, trying to figure out how they should be reacting, what they should be thinking, and stuff like that. And then just the very final episode was all these people who they had offended and been rude to, and
they went to that Pakistani restaurant,
and they were
on trial.
They were on trial for something else, and then their character witnesses for the prosecution were all the people who they had been insensitive to, and all these things.
Rude to.
She's gonna grab your earring.
Oh yeah. Hey, Teddy.
All right, let's see.
Rip it out.
All right, let's wrap it up.
They'll cover it.
We only have 2 minutes. They only have 2 minutes left, so they're not going to cover very much more.
Shows would be way more careful in including it, and they wouldn't include it in that sort of context.
Oh yeah, dude, definitely. I really enjoyed that.
That was great. I gotta watch this whole show when I get home.
I don't think it's at all.
In general, I think people are starting to be a little more sensitive to other people.
No, that's so weird to me. Like, why would that be your thought? Like, oh, let's pull a prank on them. Let's pretend you guys are a gay couple. Like, how is that funny?
This would hold up because I feel like I've still seen this dialogue in TV shows today.
It holds up for its time. I'm sure that for sure pushed it. They're like, whoa, they're talking about the gays on TV.
As a whole, now that you've been exposed to the show, does Seinfeld hold up as a show that you could potentially watch in 2018?
No. I think what makes them special is their nostalgic vibe.
Dude, I don't think you could show me a single episode that I would say doesn't hold up. I feel like it would
Good job, Luis.
really hold up well.
I would click off. I don't think so.
From what I've seen, yeah, it holds up.
Primarily, this is a comedy show, right? The jokes don't hold up. They're not relatable.
No, I think I was cool with maybe like
maybe
a third of the episodes.
It would hold up because the humor is very funny. Like, every episode I've watched so far has actually made me laugh really hard.
I don't think so. Nowadays, people want to be invested in a certain plot line and the characters as the episodes go down the line. Seinfeld is very much one of those shows you could jump into one episode and not really need any context.
Yeah.
I think
There are a
nowadays
lot of
people
shows
want
that don't need any context for like The Middle. Is that show still on? No. Okay. It was canceled.
They finally wrapped up.
Got old.
Oh,
The
okay.
kids are all grown up.
Yeah.
Well,
But like the Middle was each episode was a self-contained episode.
Yeah.
You didn't need any
The thing
context
they're
for them.
forgetting in Seinfeld, there were these overarching plot lines that
Things
carried
would
across
recur.
the year.
Yeah.
But there were the premise of Seinfeld was that it was about nothing.
Mhm.
So it was like, okay, we just stepped in on Thursday to see what's going on with these guys.
It was a vlog before vlogs were a thing.
Right. They might have been standing in line at the Chinese restaurant. And it took the entire half hour before they finally got called for their table, and right after they'd given up and left. Right, like that's the funny part.
And that's, I mean, I think this is, in 5 or 6 more years is going to be true of How I Met Your Mother. It already is becoming true of Friends. I mean, every show that is tied to a period of time is going to become less culturally relevant over time.
Yeah.
TV guides and answering machine, the fact that the answering machine would go on,
They
like
don't
all
have
of those,
cell phones.
all of those kinds of things.
Oh my God,
are-
there's one episode that would never make it today because the premise is that he's dating this girl and he's over at her house and he discovers that he's like number 4 on her speed dial because she had written it in.
Oh my God, this
And
is like
then-
being number 4 on somebody's MySpace. Also irrelevant.
And then her stepmother gets interested in Jerry and says, "I'll make you number 1 on my speed dial." That doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
That doesn't work
You know, and today the idea that you can't communicate with each other. So, like for example, they were looking for their car in the parking garage. They can't find their car, and meanwhile, Kramer takes off. They finally find their car. Where's Kramer? We can't just call Kramer.
Yeah,
we have to sit here and wait for Kramer to show back
and
up.
we don't have
right?
a GPS button in our car that just tells us where our car is on our phone.
You can't just click your fob and have your car go beep beep at you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can't even click the button from over here and then run to your car and jump in because it's raining because you have to
No.
stand there and do the key because they don't have the button yet.
So I mean, and then I'm from California. I have no knowledge of anything Manhattan, and yet it all worked for me anyway. Like I don't understand. There was a whole episode where George took a guy's job while he was on vacation, moving cars so that they wouldn't get parking tickets. And the whole idea that that could be a job and that a person could live like that, none of it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yet it was funny.
Well, and with How I Met Your Mother is also set in New York, and the idea of going to and Friends also set in New York. The idea that you would go to a coffee shop every single day, I'm like,
How much does that coffee cost? What do people make for a living that you can sit? And then that apartment, they did have to admit that Monica's grandmother had gotten it on rent control, and that's the only reason why they could afford to live there, because there's no way. But I mean, for those of us who aren't from New York, you could say that these things don't make sense, and yet they can make sense for us.
And like,
because
right
I can
now,
accept the context of another culture, because even though I ostensibly live in the same, white American culture, not all of it is the same.
New York is a special
New York is a
subset.
different thing. California is a different thing.
Going back to your comment about somebody moving cars for a living, now the Teslas, you can just push a button from your office and the car will change its parking spot for you automatically, autonomously.
That
so
is
it's like
crazy.
in another
So
10
now,
years.
see, that guy's out of work now.
Yeah, that
because
guy's out of work because of the machines.
Machines, man.
The machine is getting us.
Elon Musk yet again screwed
Ongoing
us.
story and more context.
Comedy changes every single era. So for that time, it was appropriate for that audience.
Yep.
Every single generation gets more and more PC. So
Or differently
for
PC.
that time, for
See,
the older audience, I think that is acceptable for what it is. It might
okay,
not be-
so being characterized as the older audience, loving that. But I also, that's interesting that he thinks that people are getting more PC, because as I think, and you keep bringing up How I Met Your Mother, that could not,
Or South Park.
maybe because I'm old, but I'm not offended by it. I do notice that it's very raunchy.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that they overtly talk about, they had to used to be careful about it.
Yeah, they used to have to use euphemisms to talk about these
Yeah.
things, and now they can just openly say
they
them.
go to
Now
strip
we know
clubs
better
and-
than to go buy a cigar store Indian and make Indian war cries while
Ooh,
making a dance. I mean, obviously that is wrong, and he shouldn't have been doing it in whatever
At the
year
time.
he was doing
in
it
the 90s.
But now we don't do that. But we do other things. I'm sorry, can we talk about How I Met Your Mother and how come Barney didn't just have his junk fall off from all the STDs that he had to have caught?
I mean, seriously.
Or Kramer, or what's his called? Quagmire.
Quagmire.
Giggity giggity.
Yeah.
Right?
Every time he opens the door, a bunch of Asian people run out of the house.
Yeah, Asian women in bikinis.
What is that implying,
and
right?
how-
Yeah.
So I don't think that's PC.
I mean,
don't
how
think
many
that's-
people have we seen in bed? I mean, I've seen bare butts, usually men's butts, but I've seen bare butts
Oh
on
my
TV.
gosh. When they first had a bare butt on TV, I was still living in Albuquerque, so that had to have been prior to 1994. It was on, holy cow, what was it called? NYPD Blue it was called. And Sipowicz, because he was overweight, I think is why they were allowed to do it. You saw him from the back with no clothes on. And it was all the thing. They couldn't show it in Minnesota. You know what I mean? It was all the thing. And I know
Because
that
again,
because,
different regions are different.
yeah, they talked about how certain stations
Or
banned
what
it.
about when Ally
I know,
McBeal
it's
had an
okay.
abortion, and that was a running plot through that she had this dancing baby that would make her feel bad about her abortion, that they couldn't air in parts of the Midwest, right? That
Okay, now I don't see. Now isn't that interesting? I don't remember it being that they ever made it clear that that was because of an abortion.
I
thought it was
I never
that she
watched
had
the show
delayed
because I was a
reproduction.
child, and I thought it was because she had an abortion. And
I thought it was
that
because she
crazy
delayed
to do.
reproduction because she was pursuing her career. I frankly don't remember. I watched every episode of that show, but I don't remember what that was.
Well,
But
and you went to Minnesota for a couple of
It
days
was
and found out
definitely-
you were gonna miss your day of Ally McBeal.
yeah, I was in Minnesota on a Monday, and I'm like, "Where's Ally McBeal?" And they literally don't show it there. And so, I mean, certain areas
PC depends on time and place.
and place. And this country is a big country, and there are a lot of different cultures within the country. That's for sure.
South Park is still they're still doing a lot of really right on the edge kind of things.
Mm-hmm. That's their whole job.
That's their whole.
goal.
That's the whole thing, and it's funny because it's South Park, but apparently because these guys are trying to be skeptical of Seinfeld, it's not
Yeah.
funny because it's the same thing or something.
I mean, not to circle it back, but we're almost at the end. But again, these things, like you said, these things are located in their era, and so a lot of the cultural motifs and stuff will only apply to that era. But this is also an opportunity for things to get introduced into the culture that that came out of a culture that's almost talking about it, but not quite. And so you're always having to. TV lives on that edge of whether you can talk about it or not, and that's the point of having it. You're now sitting here saying, "I can't believe they were talking about gays like that," because they at some point talked about gays like that. You know, we talked about Indians like that because we talk about it now because they were talking about it then. And you can't. I don't think it's very cool to bite the hand that feeds you. They gave you the opportunity to be able to have an honest conversation the way that you would like to, because they had to have obsequious, is that the right word? Oblique conversations in the past.
Well, and so, okay, we got to remember what the premise of this thing that we're watching is. Does it hold up? And so a lot of the things that we're saying mean that probably for modern viewers who don't want to think about things the way that maybe we used to think about them, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't hold up for them. I would like to argue that a lot of the things are generic. Like the thing that popped into my head, that's generic. The thing that popped into my head that probably doesn't work today is Spongeworthy.
Because
that's not on the market
whole plot
anymore.
of that episode was that they were discontinued.
Right. Yeah. And so now they're discontinued.
Yeah. So you have
of course they are
a generation that doesn't know what they are.
Viewers, there is a new type of sponge on the market. It's just not the Today Sponge.
Yeah.
Sorry. Is it just as effective as the old one?
Which means it's not very effective.
Yes.
Don't use it as your only form of birth control.
So, yeah.
That was the point of the episode,
that was my human sexuality marker for you. But that was the point. Well,
it was definitely part of the episode.
Right? And it was a big
it.
cultural thing that she is promiscuous enough that she needs to save her favorite kind of birth control.
Yeah.
And so she got more selective about her potential partners because she didn't know if she wanted to waste her last remaining sponges on somebody who isn't really worth it.
Yeah.
And so that was what the running gag was. And it's kind of an interesting, still relevant issue.
Yeah.
Like, who's worthy of, whatever amount of money you have to devote to your birth control method or exposure to disease or whatever.
And it's still a really tough conversation because, I mean, if she didn't have that scarcity, maybe she'd be having sex with people like out of convenience or because it's too awkward or like who has time to say no anyway. And that's still a very relevant cultural concept. It's like the mechanism might be slightly different, but the themes are enduring because they are. Oh, are you done with this vlog?
I'm done.
Okay.
There's only a minute and a half left.
All right, let's just suck it up.
There's not a minute and a half left. Who taught you how to do math?
What?
There's 20
like-
seconds left.
Oh, I thought it was 15:58. I read the 4 wrong.
Yeah.
Good to hear from FBE. Thank you so much.
I was taught by my mom to do math.
What kind of homeschool kid are you?
Very first episode of this
No, we
brand
like
new
this guy.
series.
Like
What
at one
did you
point I
guys
say
think
good
of this
boy,
show? Would you like
and
to see more?
I am
And
old, so I'm
what
allowed to
types
call
of
him
things
a
would you
younger
like to
than me
see in the
boy,
next
right?
episode?
Yeah.
You gotta let us-
And also, I'd like you to just look at the like to dislike ratio of this video.
Oh,
13 versus 122.
13,000 likes, 122,000 dislikes.
Okay, so we're not unique.
We're not unique.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't really record an outro for this, so I'll just say thanks for watching. Don't forget to post a comment down below, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. Don't forget to hit the bell icon as well to be notified of all future videos. What else can I shill for? Oh, follow me on Twitter. Is there anything else? I think that's basically it. Post a comment about like what you think of Seinfeld, and if you don't like Seinfeld, your comment will be deleted. I'm just kidding, but you better like it. Judging by the like to dislike, I think the chances are you're probably gonna like Seinfeld, or at least dislike that video. So thanks for watching. I'll leave a link to the original video in the description, and I will see you next time I make a video.